And I almost put him in a different category than Michael in terms of the GOAT discussion. And I think to me, when people kind of compare Michael and LeBron, I don't think they don't bring that up.
Welcome to another episode of In the Lab with Hoopsology. I am your host, Matt Thomas, joined by my co-host and best friend, Justin Goodrum. Justin, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well. Summer's almost over. It's Labor Day, so we're in the heart of the sports season. Everything's starting back up again, so I can't complain. About yourself?
Doing well. This is a great time of year. Absolutely. I love when we turn this corner on Labor Day, like you mentioned. Um, Really quickly, before we get into things, because this is going to be a little bit of a unique episode of In the Lab in many ways, and we'll talk about that. But really quickly, want to give a shout out to all the new followers, subscribers to our YouTube channel, and just say thank you for supporting the show. As always, we've got brand new interview content coming out to you guys every week, oftentimes multiple times per week. We really appreciate your support. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please consider sharing it with a friend who likes sports, who especially likes basketball, and we'll just continue growing the show and growing the conversation. Thank you, as always, for supporting Hoopsology. And in this episode of In the Lab with Hoopsology, it's kind of both one of our interview episodes and In the Lab. This is something that I've wanted us to do for a long time, and no better time than the off season to get creative with show ideas, right? So it's been, we've been doing podcasting, Justin, for well over a decade, but it's been at least 4 years in the making on this show for us to actually interview each other. And today, Justin, you, my friend, are on the hot seat, so
That's
to
right.
speak. So we're going to be finding out more about Justin in terms of basketball and his relationship to the sport and his big picture thoughts on the sport. So a lot of times we cover current event type issues in the lab. We might get into a little bit of that, but we're going to dive right in here. And Justin, I want to start off with a question that I love that we often ask our guests, and I want to know your answer to this question. And we're going to ask you both of our questions here. I want to know, first and foremost, what is your first basketball memory that you can remember?
Yeah, so I got two. I'm kind of breaking the rules because I got two of them. One pro, one college. So college, I have to say it was fourth grade. I think you know the backstory. Matt and I known each other since middle school. This is an elementary school memory. Had a fourth grade teacher, Mr. Prentice, and his wife actually taught at Grant. She was the science teacher. I'm blanking on her name, but you probably remember who she is. They both passed away now, but he hardcore Lobo fan and had us watch Lobo games during class. Um, During like the NCAA tournament, I mean, we weren't learning anything. I guess we were. We were learning about basketball. But he'd bring the TV in there, and we're watching the games. And I believe there was one promotion in which if the students basically it wasn't a coloring book, but it was a page. It was like this, I think a Lobo Louie, a Lobo Lucy. You color it, you get into the game. So I think that was like my first Lobo game. I think it was like triple overtime. It was a
Wow.
women's game at the pit. So that was like my first distinct memory. My pro memory has to be the 1992 NBA Finals, the Bulls versus the Portland Trail Blazers. Just seeing Clyde Drexler and Jordan, really just like any other kid of the 90s, forming that relationship with the Bulls.
The shrug.
Yep, the shrug. I just think that really just got burned into my mind. So those are probably those two.
Dang. Well, shout out to Mr. Prentice. Sounds like one of those
Right.
cool teachers that everyone wanted.
Yeah. He was a taxidermist. Yeah, he would do live taxidermy in the class. Yeah.
Wow. Taxidermy and basketball.
Right.
What a combination.
Right.
Awesome. And of all your memories of basketball, what's kind of your favorite or a favorite memory or two?
Well, I mean, it's stereotypical just to say Jordan, right? So I'll just kind of surface level say the Jordan flu game, and then of course
Mm.
the shot that he hit in Utah,
Oh,
just to win the
yeah,
title. I mean, those are just stereotypical answers. But I will
iconic.
say, I kind of felt. I don't know. I don't feel wrong about this now, but at the time, I felt kind of weird, really enjoying this moment because this was a non-Chicago Bulls moment, and that's with the Lakers, and that's Robert Ory, the shot that he hit against the Sacramento Kings,
Oh,
just
wow.
an iconic shot. And I didn't figure I'd be excited about something else that happened within the NBA that wasn't Chicago Bulls related, and I was. That game was great, and that shot was incredible. So, and I just went nuts when the shot went in. So, I have to say that's probably one of my favorite basketball memories is just seeing that shot go in. I would say just personally too. I know I'm kind of breaking the rules here, but
No, go for it.
it's a distinct memory, even though it didn't end the way that I would like it to. That was I went to Sandia High School in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think it's my junior year. They were really good, and they went to the state championship game against La Cueva. Really great game, and La Cueva ended up beating them. It was a bonehead play by Sandia. They had a chance to win the game, but the ball was turned over. But
Ah,
nevertheless, it was a great game and a great season for Sandia. And a mutual friend of ours, Paul Gibson, I think he played in a band. And he saw all those games. There was like buzzer beaters between both those teams. There was a great rivalry throughout the season. And then I went to the national title game in the pit. So that was a very pretty distinct memory, even though my high school fell short. So
yeah, definitely, definitely. That's always super impactful. Um, when your school goes the distance or close to it in an event like that. I know you and I have a lot of great memories together as well, rooting for the Lobos in the past
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Had a lot of fun in our college time, and we're lucky to
absolutely.
watch some great teams
Hmm.
for the New Mexico Lobos. It's been a little while since. I mean, they've had some recent success. Shout out to Coach Rick Pitino,
Yeah.
but awesome. Yeah, interesting that you bring up Ori. You know, the only three peats we've seen post merger in the NBA have been that Ori Lakers team is the most recent, as well as, of course, the Chicago Bulls, who you love and adore, and, and we'll get to them in a little bit here. Want to ask overall, I think regular listeners of the show know that you like two things as far as sports go. They know you like combat sports if they've been listening really closely,
Correct.
and they know that you love basketball. Starting with basketball, what kind of draws you to the sport overall? I know you mentioned Michael Jordan in 92 against the Blazers there, but kind of like big picture basketball, was it the Bulls or was there something specific that, you know, you're doing a basketball podcast instead of a football podcast, for example,
Yeah.
or other
No.
sports?
Yeah, that's fair. I think with basketball, what really drew the sport to me is I would say compared to other sports, and we've talked to guests about this, is I think the athletes having the ability to have more self-expression. And I think that's why I'm pretty attracted to combat sports because of this the
Mm,
individuality of its competitors. And I think basketball shares that within a team framework. So that's what attracts me to basketball probably the most, and the fluidity of the game itself. Like I like other sports. I mean, my parents would tell you I'm a sports fanatic, but I just think what I like about basketball is just the improvisation. I think like football is pretty militaristic. I think for those who just dismiss sports and just dismiss football, I for those who follow it, it's a very tactical game, which part of it I like, part of it I don't really care for. But I think for basketball, I just like how we saw in the Olympics, France was taking it to them, and then all of a sudden you just saw the game can just flip on a dime just in terms of one person taking it over. Now it's Steph Curry. So I just like those flows of momentum changing all the time. And I think it started, of course, with the star power, but I don't know. I just think the culture of the NBA, I think, especially for kids, it's different. I don't want to be like get off my lawn, but I would say I think the NBA has always been good about reaching out to the kids. I think now with social media, I think back then with television through inside stuff, to just like the All-Star weekend, just in terms of like a lot of the kids' festivities before that the All-Star game kicks off. So I think that may be connected. And also too, it was just, I don't know, it was a coincidence just with Luke Longley. He played at New Mexico. He played on the Chicago Bulls. So just that a lot of fusion, a lot of connections just with the teams that I follow, having that through line. I think this made it more personal and more enjoyable to watch compared to other sports, especially when I was younger.
Right on. Yeah, great answer. Why do you enjoy professional wrestling? Have to tack this on here
Oh,
too.
of course.
Kind of falls in line lightly with combat sports. We know professional
Yeah.
wrestling's a different animal.
Um,
I
yeah,
like professional wrestling too, even though I don't keep up with modern professional wrestling as
sure.
much as you.
Yeah,
Lay it on us.
so I would say compared to, and I think I haven't said this on this show. I've told friends this. I really like basketball, but I love combat sports.
Mm,
That's just what I feel the most connection to. And I think with pro wrestling, and I've always said this, pro wrestling's not a sport. I think it's an art form. I think it's a great form of entertainment. It's not a sport. I mean, it's a work. It's predetermined. I mean, that disqualifies you from being a actual sport of competition. Yeah, in my opinion, you hear all the excuses you want about, oh, you're competing about spots and you're competing about having the best match. I mean, that's garbage. I mean, it's entertainment. I mean, and it doesn't degrade for what pro wrestling is. And it's tough, man, because I don't know, being professing that I'm a pro wrestling fan, I think has been embarrassing, quite honestly. I
mm.
mean, I've been really hesitant of telling my friends that I watch pro wrestling, especially when I was younger. I felt embarrassed to watch it, and I think I had every right to feel that way, just in terms of what was happening on television on Daily Week. I mean, I never felt embarrassed to watch, basketball. I mean, teams win or lose, teams suck. I mean, that's the way it goes. But I just think with pro wrestling, I would kind of classify it. I know I'm sounding pretty negative right now, but I would classify it through just my entire history of watching it since I was a kid to now. It's kind of like an abusive relationship a little bit.
Oh wow.
I never, and I think to me, take a look at watching. And I've talked to like my girlfriend about this. You watch like a show, even like the most like I would say just the bottom of the barrel television shows. You know what you're getting when you watch it. Like talk shows, Jerry Springer or Maury Povich, whatever you think is like the most just terrible television. Like you know what you're getting as the viewer. And I think with pro wrestling, to have one particular person, Vince McMahon, who for a long time has ruled the pro wrestling world and has gone on record as stating that he has, I think, really exploited his fan base to have turned really his programming into his own personal kind of playground to really just have a lot of despicable things happen. I think that's where those feelings comes from, where I'm just watching, you know, 2 hours of Raw, 3 hours of Raw every week, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Like this is horrible. And I don't never
Mm,
want to tell anybody that I watched this. And I think for me, what I found fascinating about pro wrestling and why I still watch to this day is just I think compared to other sports, pro wrestling you have to be in it to love it, to be a fan or to be in there. Like basketball is pretty easy. You go to a park, you can play. It's a lot. It's very mainstream. Pro wrestling is one of those things taboo. I think it's in terms of participating in it, it's very hard on your body. And then in terms of
for
just the
sure.
moments throughout history, it's just a lot of just despicable things. So I think now I'm a lot more prouder to be a pro wrestling fan. I think a lot of the general public knows that whether you watch AEW, WWE, whatever promotion you want, these promotions are not trying to be a sport. It is entertainment that you're watching to get into the storylines, the athleticism, the pageantry, whatever you want to get into. And it's not, trying to, place bets on who's going to win the match, even though people actually do that. It's on DraftKings. But nevertheless, I think your consumer base, they're watching it for this entertainment value. And I'm glad that, with everything that's unfolded with Vince, he is not there anymore. The wrestlers feel better, the viewers feel better, and the product's better. I
Mm,
mean, WWE is making it the most money it's made probably ever, and that's due to Vince, ultimately not being there. I remember
mm.
there's some changes happened when Vince was still there, but their business model. I can go on and on about this, but the bottom line is that since 2020, I think there's been a dramatic change in terms of just watching wrestling every week, and just really enjoying it because I've had to stop my mind map to be honest with you because you have kids, our friends have children, and just if you already ever asked me, hey, should my kids watch this? I think for a long time I'd be like, have them stay away, do not
Mm,
watch, they just stay away, please, because it was just I just don't think it was because to me it's one of those things when you watch a PG movie, you expect PG content in it, and I think I've watched WWE. I think before the last few years, they've been known as a PG product, but there's been weeks where there's like PG-13 rated R stuff happening, and it's a PG product. Like, what are you doing? And I don't know, there's just several things that's just like, yeah, I've just been disgusted to be associated as a fan. But it's just, I think the athleticism, getting connected to wrestlers at an independent level and then seeing them just thrive, like, Brian Danielson had the big match over the weekend. I
mm,
saw him wrestle years ago, when I
mhm.
was first watching independent wrestling. So I can go on about this, but I think it is it's a very much a love hate relationship. And I'm proud to say now that it's mostly in kind of the love category in terms of just enjoying it every week. Do I complain? Sure, but at least it's not how it was a few years ago. So
Yeah, it does seem like there's been, and you can speak to this more than me. I don't want to dwell too long on
sure,
wrestling, but
yeah,
I,
of
I
course,
know this is something you're passionate about. It does seem to me like there's been, you mentioned that sort of change of culture, like around the 2020 timetable or so. It seems like also society wise too, like it used to be when we were growing up, like you probably hide that you're a wrestling fan because otherwise it like puts you in the slot where you're the wrestling kid and there are negative
sure,
stereotypes that come with that you talked about earlier. It seems like now too there's kind of a broader societal level understanding for wrestling fandom. I think another thing that's been big too that I couldn't put my finger on when it started, but other sports started adopting this idea of the title belt and
yeah,
people actually wearing like a wrestling
correct,
title belt
correct,
for things.
yeah,
I think that's been huge for the sport of wrestling as well because it's given it that
excellent point,
mainstream appeal. Like you're not just this dude who's obsessed with what Stone Cold Steve Austin is doing or saying or whatever the case may be. You're not just like kids shouting out Stone Cold catchphrases. I'm not saying you were that kid, but
sure, yeah.
it has this broader appeal now, I guess.
Yeah. No, you're right. And also things I never thought would be part of the lexicon. I've heard heel and babyface on like
Yeah,
this the most common, and that is a insider wrestling term for like wrestling nerds to use. And
good
now that
point.
it's kind of mainstream, discussion point, it's crazy. And I think your great point with the title belts, because I know WWE's been really active in doing that, and that's been a lot of hardcore fans will scoff at that. But you're absolutely right. I think that has been really a huge turning point and kind of bridging these two worlds together. And I'll also say, we're millennials, and I think the '90s was the Attitude Era boom period, and I think
Right.
now we're almost in our 40s now, so we're used to pro wrestling, being part of. It's different. It was just I think
That's
during the
true.
'90s, it wasn't like, oh, is Stone Cold going to really win this match or beat The Rock? It was no. Stone Cold is entertaining. He's beating up his boss. You're going to tune in to see what The Rock said, or you're going to tune in to see what crazy thing is happening. It was for entertainment. So it wasn't, and I think a lot of older fans and a lot of, I think, especially competitors of combat sports, they see pro wrestling as more of like this threat, or they're tricked when they're younger, or they're bamboozled of like, oh, I thought this was real, and then they said it was fake. It was just, I hate this now, or they're trying to be a real sport. And it's just, and I think being mostly millennials, I will use a generalization, but I truly do feel just we're just entertained by it. I mean, it's not not brain surgery. It's just like any other television show, like The Simpsons, or watching The Matrix. We didn't think The Matrix is real. Like it's entertainment. So I think that's partly. The cause of now a lot of mainstream acceptance is that it's kind of just part of just everyday entertainment that you see every week. So
Yeah. Yep. Good point. All right, I got to spin us back
yeah,
towards basketball, though I do enjoy the wrestling talk. Um, I want to know your let's start with present day, like
Sure.
heading into this season or what you saw last season. Who is your favorite team in the league? And I think people who have been following or are just looking visually probably know the answer to this. And maybe what are some of the teams you like in the league that maybe aren't your favorite team, just in the current landscape of the NBA, and you can also take it college,
Yeah.
WNBA as well.
Cool. Yeah.
Just
I
some
would.
favorite teams.
Yeah. So I would say favorite, of course, the Bulls, and it has not always been that way. I mean, the Bulls are trash. I'm not watching them. But I will say this is probably one of the funnest times I've had watching the Chicago Bulls since Jordan, the post Jordan
Right.
era. And I just feel like really, and it's a bummer, and it's weird. It was bittersweet seeing him leave Chicago, but I was happy for him. I think he deserves to play in more important games.
For
I just
DeMar
felt like
DeRozan.
DeMar DeRozan, yeah. I
Yeah.
just felt like he was in these close games which he was winning, but the games didn't matter because you're going to be a mediocre playoff team.
Mm.
So I'm happy for him to go to Sacramento and hopefully playing some games of some substance that matter, and that he can go and play, in some serious Western Conference games. But I think him in Chicago, I mean, it sucks. I know we have a question later on, and I think this refers. It's a little bit of a foreshadowing, but I just think with Lonzo Ball, this when I saw him when they came to Denver, just that team, I thought they could have really done something there, and I think that's I think that era of Chicago is what I enjoy probably more than the Derrick Rose years.
Mm.
Derrick Rose really made me nervous. I just knew I was like, man, this guy's just expelling so much energy
Mm.
every time he's driving towards the basket. I didn't think he would just get hurt with no one touching him. I mean, I remember
Mm.
that. I think that was a playoff game against the 76ers.
You're right.
That
Yep.
was it was just terrible, and that this led down just a terrible path. But anyways, I would say the most recent Bulls. I love watching the Warriors. I love watching Steph Curry play. It's going to be weird. Klay Thompson playing for a different team.
Yeah.
I just think that's just going to be super strange. You know what? Another team that I really like that might be sacrilege to say because they're. I guess I don't know. People don't talk about rivals anymore, so maybe this is I'm hanging on to something that doesn't exist. But I like watching the Knicks play.
Yeah.
I love watching Jalen Brunson, and this is something about Madison Square Garden. And I wonder if I don't. This is a very interesting generational thing because I'm curious if Generation Alpha and Generation Z even really know why Madison Square Garden is important and like how great of an arena it is. Because you watch any basketball game, it can be anything. If it's close, I don't know what it's just a magic to it. I think the pit has a little bit of that too, but
Yeah.
it's just something when you just play a huge game in Madison Square Garden that is just different than playing it like people might get pissed about this, but the Staples Center or just United Center or someplace else. It's just
Crypto arena.
yeah, good, crypt. So I think the next, I really enjoy watching them. I think you mentioned WNBA. I mean, I love watching the Fever play. I just think not only Caitlin Clark, but Kelsey Mitchell. I just think once she came back, that the team's totally different. And I just like the dynamic. And I like just how, with Caitlin Clark, she's so unselfish in getting her teammates involved
Mm.
that it just changes the whole framework of that squad too. So I would say the Fever. I would say the Aces. I don't know if you caught it. It was the Sky versus the Aces, and Candy Carter hit that three, and then Asia Wilson came back and won the game. That was
Yeah.
crazy to watch. So those are teams I'm paying attention now. It's probably Fever, the Sky too, to some extent. But it's probably the Fever, the Aces, and of course the Lobos. I'm always tracking them, just seeing how they're doing. It's good to see, like you were saying, with Patino, just bringing that team just back to some prominence. There's been some dark years, so
Yeah. And I think I know the general answer to the next that's along the same lines, but maybe if you have a particular year
yeah, sure.
of the team's iteration, but kind of your favorite historical team you already touched on, like kind
Yeah.
of Jordan being in the mix, but any particular like lineup that that those Bulls had. You
Uh,
mentioned dating back to 92, which is catching like right in the middle of their first three-peat.
I would say 96, 98. I mean, that's like this, and I don't think there's going to be ever a team like that in history because
Mm.
I think The Last Dance really captured this. And I watched The Last Dance recently, rewatched it again, and just imagine. I think the only way to equate is just imagine the Warriors in the 2010s if they won 6 titles, and if Draymond Green also did wrestling. You he was actually a wrestler on the side. Like, I mean, and also not only that, but he also did the same antics as Dennis Rodman. I mean, this social media era, do you just? I mean, I just imagine just Dennis Rodman in a social media era like we have today. And then to me as a kid, and I think there's a lot of just bias with this answer because I was a kid. This is the first really big dynasty that I was able to witness. Is that I don't know. Just those players, every one of them just seemed very larger than life to me. It is just really just stuck in my mind. And that's why I always have this kind of just a loyalty to Steve Kerr to this day. Even to Luke Longley, to Ron Harper, just Tony Kukoc, like all those guys, even like Bill Wennington, it's all that just everybody who's just on that team who got played 1 minute to, the main starters. I think in my mind, no one's going to be able to replace those guys as just this iconic team. Now we can debate who's better and who has better stats and whatever, but I just think the way they just captivated, I think just the sports world. I don't think I've seen a team like that since. I think they're. I mean, you could debate like the Heat, but even then, it was only really 3 guys you care about. I don't know if you care about all of the guys on there, and
Yeah.
I don't know if there was just the drama of just in it was a crazy time. It was just like you could you're watching, Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone fight over a rebound. And then that summer they're wrestling in a wrestling match. I mean, it's crazy. With Jay Leno. It's just like, what is happening here? And it's
What
weird
a
because
time to be alive.
if you think about it, like that's not so much different than somewhat what's happening now with just like the Paul brothers. I mean, it's kind of in that same spear, as you would kind of sort of
Yeah.
speak, in terms of
Kind of
kind of
big spectacle.
entertainment, spectacle, and sport kind of all melded together. So, anyways, I just think those '90s Bulls. There've been other teams. I'm sure you can debate have been better, but just culturally, just dominance. I mean, it's just tough to really to beat that. A quick break from In the Lab to request a favor. If you love the chats with Matt and I, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video. Also, by doing that, you get all of our back interviews featuring commentators from the WNBA and the NBA, our interviews with PA announcers, and our interviews with journalists from SB Nation, NBC Sports, and The Athletic, and a lot more. Again, please subscribe. Thanks, and now back to In the Lab.
Same type of question. Just wondering, maybe some of your favorite players, and you could feel free to, have a tangent about them, or just list off as you want. If they're misunderstood, you can explain that. But
Yeah.
and we could go all levels of player, like players that you just really enjoyed watching. Maybe they're not stars, as well as like star level players. And if you have an all time favorite,
Yeah.
have at it.
No, I would say, I mean, we've talked about this person a billion times, so not spend too much time. I think my favorite player is still Michael Jordan. I mean, just I think the basketball. I mean, the best way to describe it is like the solar system. Like you have the sun, and I think Jordan. Everything evolves around Michael Jordan in
Mm.
terms of I think just small mannerisms in terms of tracing back like the Mamba mentality. I mean, where did Kobe get that from? It was Michael Jordan.
Oh,
So
and Kobe
there's
would have said as much, I
exactly,
think.
yeah, 1000%, and that's not a knock on Kobe.
Sure.
Um, I would say another player is LeBron, and we've talked about LeBron, but I think what's lost over time, and I distinctly remember this, and was so amazing, and it's just what's so irritating for like LeBron haters, like Skip Bayless. If you take a look, people just forget about this, which is astonishing to me. And I don't think, I'm trying to think, like imagine the pressure when the Olympics just got over. and Simone Biles, right? Tons of pressure during the Olympics, and she's still killing it. Even though in gymnastics terms, I think she's kind of, people would say she's aged out of the prime of what you see in normal kind of competitors in that sport, but she's still killing it. But the pressure that she feels every 4 years, but imagine that feeling that way every single day since LeBron was what, 14 years old.
Mm.
Like him on the cover of Sports Illustrated, him not as declared as like the next NBA All Star or just the next cover athlete, but the next Michael Jordan. They called him the chosen one. He's in high school. I mean, and then correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember high school games being aired on ESPN before LeBron. Like this the spectacle of, you remember the games when they were airing. I mean, it was more, I think, prominent than any NBA game at that time. I mean, just the amount of hype when he played. I think it was Sacramento. Was it his debut, his rookie
I
year?
think that's right.
Right?
Yep.
Or okay. So that just the amount of hype, that the pressure that he had to feel to not only just live up to all these expectations on the court, but just be like, you know, you're not even being compared to another, beyond a superstar athlete, but you can argue the most iconic athlete in the history of this planet. I mean, and to live up to it, and he's still playing now, and he killed it in the Olympics. Like people said he was old, but you saw him in the Olympics. He was phenomenal. I don't think he gets his due, and I almost put him in a different category than Michael in terms of the GOAT discussion. Like, and I think to me, when people kind of compare Michael and LeBron, I don't think they don't bring that up, because I think with Michael, if you watch The Last Dance and you see him go through college and you see him increase his momentum and increase his star power, there was no pressure on him to be the savior of the NBA. Like the Magic and Bird were already in the league, and he was just the spark. I would say Magic and Bird was the gasoline. Michael Jordan was the match that lit the fire and really increased the popularity of the NBA at that time. But I just remember the intense pressure LeBron was under, and to just not have any scandals. I mean, what the biggest black mark is the decision, and that's basketball related. I
Yeah.
mean, what else? I mean, that is, that is unbelievable. Just the amount of, pitfalls and just bad things that have happened. I mean, look at Jordan. I mean, you watch The Last Dance. I mean, I know the gambling thing. When I was younger, I thought it was stupid. I'm like, I don't understand. Everybody gambles. What's the big deal? But you watch The Last Dance. I mean, he was like implicated with some like mobsters and stuff, like some bad dudes. Like, I mean, I've never heard LeBron being implicated in any kind of crimes or anything. I mean, I don't know. I just feel with LeBron, no matter how you feel about just where he stands in history, and that we'll have that debate later. But I just feel he doesn't get his due for like his entire career. I just feel like people just focus on the titles and the Heat and this Cleveland, and LA, and they don't understand the totality of that his entire career and what he's done. It's beyond impressive. So that's just something that's really stuck in my mind.
Yeah, because really, by the odds, any teenager coming into the league and their chances of living up to that kind of hype. So we saw
Insane hype.
players that even though they had similar monikers placed on their names. I mean, I remember distinctly, and this is not to trash on this player, but just to prove kind of steelman your point here. I remember people comparing Joseph Forte from North Carolina to Michael Jordan with his shot making ability in college. And
Wow.
so I'm thinking like, wow, this guy's going to be great. I'm like following him back when I was playing NBA Live. I'm like, he's going to have an insane rating or something like that. And I think it was one of those cases where he maybe spent like 5 years in the league total. I
Wow.
have to look it up to be sure. But to your point, you get. I strongly agree that LeBron deserves a lot of credit for living up to the hype. I mean, because he's securely, I think, a top 10 all-time basketball player, and then
Sure.
that list gets really tight depending on what you emphasize and value subjectively, But to live up to that kind of hype and be one of the top 10 all-time greats, in, I would say, 90+% of people's lists probably have LeBron in that top 10.
Yeah,
That's amazing to your point. So absolutely. So you mentioned LeBron, you mentioned Jordan. Any other just players that come to mind, just that made you
yeah,
love the game or that you really
yeah.
enjoyed watching?
I would say, Robert Ory, for sure. I would say Steve Kerr. I just like it's weird because now three point shooting is the hot. Everybody shoots threes now, but you know, I would say in the '90s, he had was a 3 point specialist. That's all he did. And I don't know. I just was really attracted to those players. I would say another player. This is in for some reason, and we tried this. We tested this out, and it was I think a glitch in the game, and I liked him as a player. Is Andres Nocioni from
Oh yeah.
Argentina, played with the Bulls. You had a copy of NBA 2K11. I had a copy. And for some reason, this guy was just like, he was Jordan in this video game. I don't know what it was. Like, I didn't mess with the stats. I mean, the stats you mentioned, NBA Live, like playing NBA 2K, his stats was like 70. He was awesome. He was like the Jordan of that game. I don't know what it was. I don't know what happened, but he was unstoppable. Like, you cannot, like, stop this man. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in that version of that game, but anyways, this that connection with him and the video game always touch a chord to me. I'm thinking college. I go, Kenny Thomas.
Oh yeah.
Just all those guys, Charles Smith, Greg Brown, who unfortunately passed away recently. There's a lot of those Lobos. Just of course, Luke Longley. Just all through history, and it's very interesting because for a college basketball program, men's, to never go to the Sweet 16. That the bond that I think UNM has to its fan base, I think is unmatched. I don't think you would find that loyalty anywhere else if the results were exactly the same. But just
Mm,
I think the way that community has always loved the Lobos, despite them not jumping over the hump, I think it's such a unique connection that you don't see with. I could be wrong, but from what I have seen, I don't know. It's just a very accepting community there, and I think hopefully those players realize just how special the fan base UNM has because they're always just there through thick and thin and always have kind of like a forgiving heart despite some massive heartbreaks over the years. So
for sure. So question on your consumption of
yeah.
basketball. How do you typically consume basketball nowadays, and how has that changed since you started watching? And I know if you started watching, I think around the time I started watching it probably has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it goes to how television's changed. I think when I was younger, it was mostly through NBC. Like I didn't even. It's weird because I watched. We mentioned pro wrestling earlier. Like I watched wrestling, on TNT, and I guess I didn't watch basketball on TNT. I watched wrestling on there, and I watched the NBA on NBC. And so I think when the TV, that's when I got aware of because you're younger, you're a kid, you don't know about media rights deals, or you don't care about how much money these leagues are getting. So when the NBA left NBC, I was like, what is going on here? And then NBA got on ESPN, so started watching a lot of basketball on there. That was like a huge transition. And then I think not only just the pro game on ESPN, but even before then, I think I started watching a big thing, and we're talking about basketball cultures and one mixtape tour. That was on
Uh,
ESPN.
yeah,
Like just the exposure, just watching all those videos, just seeing Hot Sauce, just seeing Escalade, the Professor, just a different form of basketball that your mainstream consumers would never see being exposed through these mixtapes, and then also through just a mixtape tour. I think that was just really got into my mind. I would say now, I think traditional outlets just through streaming, with ESPN and TNT. I think it's a bummer just because unless they win in court, which I doubt. Warner Brothers Discovery, TNT, they're not going to have the NBA anymore. But I did enjoy those games on Max. That was great. You can just, if you're out, whatever, and you catch the game in the third quarter, you can just rewind it and watch the game from scratch. And then they had alternate themes, alternate streams like Adam Lefko. He has his betting stream on there. So I enjoy that different form, different ways of watching the game. But I would say on a kind of daily basis, YouTube and X is where I kind of consume the most NBA content, not only through highlights, but also analysis too, memes. I think just technology, especially, I think the NBA in particular is one of the first leagues to really adapt to technology the best. Not everybody else is kind of on the bandwagon, but I think the NBA has been always friendly to newer technologies. So I would have to say nowadays, probably YouTube and probably X mostly, along with your kind of streaming networks.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And talking about changes, there have also been a lot of changes that have happened with basketball itself. So let's say you are, the all powerful commissioner and you are able to, with owner approval, change something in the NBA or in college sports or wherever you would like to do this. What would you change about the game right now, the modern game?
After seeing the Olympics, the NBA, and college basketball changing their rule set, the FIBA rules,
Mm,
both. I just
gotcha.
think the games would just be a lot more exciting. You're playing the same game that's played internationally. I just think we have like this area. I know I saw Carmelo Anthony. He was saying, I think he has had an arrogant attitude. I think I kind of agree with him in some ways in terms of just America being dominant on the international stage. This is America's game. But I
Mm,
think in reality, this is not America's game. It's the world's games now.
mm.
And I think you clearly see just seeing Team USA, just their enjoyment, and just seeing the fans' enjoyment. I just think adopting an international rule set to me, I think would just help basketball in America moving forward. So I think just adapting FIBA rules. I just think selfishly, I think I would enjoy that a lot better than what we get now.
Nice. I think we're aligned there. And in along these lines, maybe just bigger picture, maybe tapping in culturally on
Yeah.
that level or otherwise. How do you see the health of the leagues? So you can take this wherever you want to go, college, professional, women's, men's,
Yeah.
and then how do you see the health of not only the leagues but also the game of basketball as a whole? Is kind of a big,
Yeah.
broad question.
Yeah, we had a recent guest, Andrew Pekash, the co-founder of Plofluence. He was saying he did a post on LinkedIn stating that the game of basketball has grown pretty substantially internationally, and that is true. And I think that's a lot to do with David Stern's vision of using the dream team to push the popularity of the league and also working with this. I know a lot of fans they don't like this, but it's true. Advertisers, Nike, I think they've been a big reason also of just the popularity of players like Kobe Bryant to just the way that Yao Ming's able to be super popular in America, and that continues now with just the advent of social media. I would say the game of basketball's a lot is very healthy. I think it's cool to see variations of basketball being popularized. 3x3. I mean, that was something 10 years ago we weren't. I mean, besides Hoop It Up. That's the only 3x3 I really even knew about. And now you're seeing an international, competitions with FIBA. You're seeing it in the Olympics. You're seeing it with Big Three. I mean, that's awesome. Just seeing other forms of the game and an ability for players that A are retired from the NBA or B can't make the league. They can play in alternate forms of basketball. I think that's awesome. I think going by leagues, I would say the NBA is super healthy. I mean, they signed an insane TV deal. They're planning on expanding to I would say Vegas, Seattle. I think Mexico City's in play, and so I think the health of the league is placed to their advantage. I think the way television is being positioned now plays to the NBA's strengths, just because
Mhm.
they don't need monster ratings in order to get maximum value. I think if this was 15 years ago, I would never dream they would get this much money for a TV deal. I think that'd be way too much, just based on the ratings. But now, just the way TV is, it's live sports is the most important thing, and it means more than a TV show. So that's why they're getting all this money. from all these different networks. So I think the NBA is really healthy. I think the WNBA, newfound success, and I think built from the ground up, and especially through I think the college game really improving not only I would say their conditions, but also NIL. I think that's another big factor in all of this. Players being super relevant. Like I think it was Flage. She plays for LSU. I
Mm.
mean, she is just as popular as a rap artist as she is a basketball player. I mean, right now, and that's not a diss. I mean, it's going to be very interesting when she hits the league because she is kind of developing into a brand all to herself. She reminds me a lot of Shaq, to be honest, just in terms of just not just being a basketball player, but just being all encompassing at the same time. So I think the women's game is healthier. I still
Mm.
wish that the higher ups, the people in power positions, would be a lot more aggressive. I just think it might be some strong language, but I think they've been lazy in some of fighting for particular rights, like charter flights. I just think you're professional athletes, and just to wait until you have enough money, I don't know. I just feel just to not fight for your just basic necessities of the league. I was just not impressed by that. But Caitlin Clark adding a lot of fuel. And I was talking to Andrew, Petcash, and I disagree with him in terms of just the rights of that TV deal. And that's cool. The WNBA has the rights to renegotiate in 2028 because it's not just Caitlin Clark. You have a huge incoming freshman class from college that has huge fan base appeal. And I think that is why I think the WNBA is poised to be a very powerful league because there's other players that really matter. So I think the WNBA is in a really good place. College, that is a massive question mark. I don't know, especially with NIL, because I mean, from the men's side, you can still make endorsements as a pro, and then it's just one of those things. If coming out of high school, you could play in, overtime. You can just play overseas, and just the way our world is so interconnected, it's not a drop off if you're just playing overseas for a year. But at the same time, now you can make money in college. So it's just like before, if you're playing for Duke, you're not missing out on like millions of dollars. You can still get the endorsement deals and still enjoy college. I think that the college experience is still very powerful, and now you can make money. So I think that's going to be very interesting. Not only that, with the transfer portal as well. So I think there's some huge question marks. I would say the women's game is poised to be a lot more successful than the men's because I just think with men's basketball in college, the path to the NBA is a lot quicker. Whereas the WNBA, I think they have to stay in school longer, and that creates more of a bond with the audience with these different schools. So I think overall the game's pretty healthy, and I think I like how the game compared to other sports is friendlier to change. That's what I like the most compared to football or baseball, where it's just like it's so regimented, it's so built on tradition. It kind of turns me off. Whereas I think with basketball, in so many ways, it's always adapting and always changing, and that's something that is really appealing to me.
Gotcha. I should have asked you this earlier when you were mentioning LeBron and the great things he's accomplished,
Yeah.
as well as Michael Jordan. Heading up towards the end of our interview here, settle the GOAT debate for us. Who is the GOAT in your view as of 2024?
It's such a subjective question, man. I just think if it's a stats discussion, it really is tough. I think that's where I think LeBron has like a huge case. I think if you put in intangibles and put into like the growth of the league, I would just say it's Jordan. LeBron affected the league in different ways, but I don't know if the league necessarily exploded in popularity compare under Jordan. It just everything was built around just with Jordan. He was just such an icon, and I just think with LeBron, he was a really he was a top star athlete in America. Michael Jordan, it was it. He was number one. You can't touch him, and just the way his competitors talk about him, I think that's another factor too. There's no other competitor. Kobe's the closest that they compete against him. They want to beat him, but it's just this unspoken respect they have for MJ that they don't have for LeBron. And I mean, they respect LeBron. I mean, but I don't know. It's just when you see the contemporaries just talk about Jordan, and I don't want to get like religious, but it's someone like a godlike figure, and I just have not seen that with any other athlete since. Then maybe in another sport, Tiger Woods was the closest for a few years there, but I just feel if you factor in intangibles like just the growth of the game exploding, this cultural impact, I would say Jordan is he's number one. I mean, he's affected other sports. I mean, take a look at how many football teams have this logo on their jerseys. It's Michael. So
Yep. Yeah. Well said. Um, we've had a lot of great guests on our
yeah,
show. That's one of the best things about this show is that we've gotten to meet a lot of cool people
yeah,
and sit down and chat with them for 30 to 60 minutes about topics that they're experts on, and also love of the sport of basketball. And just want to ask as we wrap up here, if any interviews, is not to slight any of our guests, we've had,
yeah.
I don't think we've had any interviews that I have not thoroughly enjoyed. Like
Me too.
it's all
Yeah,
been a blast.
yeah.
But just in our, almost 5 years doing this show now as Hoopsology, what stands out to you from past interviews?
Good question. I think it's the ability for our guest to just be so open and just allow us and not to hate on us or talk bad about us, but I mean compared to our guests, give us the time of day and give us their time when it's late night. I mean, we're based in the mountain time zone, they're on the east coast, so it's almost 9-10 o'clock, it's like bedtime, and we may be interrupting, like they're watching games or whatever, and they're taking time out to talk to us and talk to our audience. And I always don't take that for granted. Memorable interviews. Um, let's see. I would say just shout out a few guests. And of course, Ben Lyons. He's been on the show multiple times. Probably one of our first big gets. Kurt Goldsberry, Bo Estes. Great interview. I would say Morgan Allison, just the behind the scenes of Inside the NBA. Troy Pepper, with this being a PA announcer. Interview I did by myself. Sean Grande, the
Oh
voice of the
yeah.
Boston Celtics. That was a great interview. There's just been so many. I mean, we talked to
Oh
Adam
yeah.
Amin, we talked to Mike Greenberg. I mean, it's crazy. We just, I think, and shout out to, and one of the things what I most appreciate is the mainstream media. I mean, in terms of basketball analysts, they know inside the NBA, they know Stephen A. Smith, and maybe Skip Bayless, and that's pretty much it. But what I pride myself on is seeing like people that they had a small audience to begin with. For instance, Christina Williams, who covers the WNBA, and now she has her own talk show on iHeart, or Tarika, talking with her, and now she's on CBS Sports, the silent reporter doing WNBA games. Like that is just seeing the trajectory of this reporters, and now I think Noah Dizel.
Hmm.
She's got a new gig going on too, and just seeing
Yeah.
reporters that we started talking to in 2020 now be killing it on just a national stage. Like Dexter Henry, now he's more prominent now, and gotten a lot more popular. Like I think that's the coolest thing is to knowing that men and women that cover the NBA and WNBA on a daily basis that put the time in, that know what they're talking about, that we're talking to people that care about these teams, that they're not just we're not talking to the mainstream talking heads that don't give a crap about the Detroit Pistons, that don't care about the Spurs, these lower quote unquote lower market teams. That when we talk to these reporters, we get an insight as to why these teams matter in this league and how this league fundamentally works is through these reporters that put in the work, and I truly appreciate them. Not only the reporters, but as we interview DJs, PA announcers. It's just my normal spiel here, but just we talked about cryptocurrency. We talked about just Lee Ellis. I mean, that's he's been incredible, and that's another standout guest. Somebody that we admired from no dunks and taking a chance on himself, a surefiable gig. Just talking basketball with his friends. He's traveling all across the world and taking a huge risk. I mean,
Yeah.
that's for the love of basketball. And so I appreciate you just coming on this journey with me, man. I know there's me just going after these guests and as being on the ride because I think with our show, our purpose has been to not only just talk about the mainstream topics, anybody can do that. There's a million shows, but talk about why basketball is beloved as just a sport to play, whether you're getting into it, whether you're 5 years old or whether you're 90, and how this sport crosses all boundaries compared to other forms of athletic competition. So I think, anyways, I think those are the guests. I'm forgetting a bunch of guests that stand out, but those are the ones that pop out to me.
Well said, man. And it's a pleasure being on this journey with you. This is a
Yeah,
great spot to end our interview for today. But your questions to Justin don't have to end. If you have them, feel free to put them in the comments. Any kind of Q&A stuff with Justin, we'll keep an eye on our YouTube comments, and we can ping each other about it and
yeah,
answer your questions. If you have further questions, things you want to know about the hosts, we will turn the mic the other way down the road. We'll have this conversation go both ways, of course. But Justin, I appreciate you being in the hot seat
yeah,
first, and
of course.
great to be in Hoopsology with you all these years. So thanks for joining in the interview. You can follow him at JG Hoopsology. You see, if you're watching on YouTube, his name there for social media. And we will be back again with another episode of In the Lab with Hoopsology, and we'll have more great interviews coming your way all through this off season, pulling us into October when the regular season gets going again, which is not far away, kids.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. For Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. Justin, any last things to say before we wrap up?
No, just comments, questions, hoopsologypod@gmail.com. Check out our most recent interviews with Calvin Wetzel, Andrew Petcash. We've had a ton of interviews interviewing Pat Boylan, Noah Eagle, tons of interviews breaking out the WNBA season as well. So just check out our archives when you have a chance.
Right on. For Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace out.
See you next time.